In the early 2000s, China became the factory of the world. Cheap labor, massive infrastructure, and efficient supply chains made it the cornerstone of global manufacturing. However, today, in 2026, cracks are beginning to show. Rising costs, geopolitical tensions, and an aging population are forcing companies to look elsewhere. Many are turning to a single country with 1.4 billion people, a young workforce, and ambitious reforms: India. Since Narendra Modi took office in 2014, India has made pragmatic decisions in many areas and has shown significant development, increasing its value in international politics. With Modi's leadership, India has continuously improved its relations with Israel in the Middle East. While signing numerous defense industry agreements with the US and France, it did not abandon its historical defense ties with Russia and continued to sign new defense agreements with Russia as well. Strengthening its relations with the European Union each year, India has also increased its influence in Asia. India, a very important country for the US, has always maintained privileged relations with Russia and kept this relationship separate from the negative influence of the US. As China's rise after the 2000s turned it from a strong competitor to a serious threat for the US, India, with its population, geopolitical position, military, and rich natural resources, has become an invaluable ally for the United States. It is possible for China to regain the advantage it gained over the US in trade routes with India. However, China holds significant trump cards against the US. These include rare earth elements and the processing of these elements. India is rapidly developing its relations with both the US and the European Union and signing many profitable agreements. On the other hand, as a BRICS member, India is increasing its influence in Asia and wants to show the world that it is no longer a colonial country. By turning its population and underground resources to its own advantage through ambitious reforms, it aims to demonstrate its own strength to the entire world. There is now an India that wants to be at the center of new trade routes, not just a country preferred by other nations to produce their goods more cheaply, but one that wants to create its own Indian brands. As of 2023, India, the most populous country in the world, has many advantages, but of course also faces many disadvantages. Whether India, under Modi's administration since 2014, will be able to use its potential is something history will show us. But the US very much wants India to become the world's new factory in place of China. So, is India ready to become the world's new factory? It would be accurate to divide India's economic and diplomatic development into two periods, before 2014 and after 2014. This is because the year 2014 was a turning point for India. Narendra Modi was elected as the Prime Minister of India for the first time on May 26, 2014. With Modi coming to power, significant changes and developments began to emerge in many areas in India. Indian nationalism saw a significant rise. Modi's use of religion to establish state authority brought Hinduism more prominently into government levels. This sometimes led to serious conflicts between Hindus and Muslims in certain areas in India. One of Modi's biggest ambitions was for the Indian Army to reach the capacity to produce its own weapons and aircraft. While the Indian Army was making agreements with Russia on one hand, it was also making agreements with France, a member of the European Union, on the other. This sometimes caused problems and led to delays in agreements and delivery times. The rapprochement with the United States in the defense industry increased during the Trump era. Modi paid special attention to agreements made with nuclear-armed countries such as the USA, Russia, and France in the defense industry. Because being neighbors with nuclear-armed countries like China and Pakistan, in a sense, makes it necessary for India to make agreements with countries like the USA, Russia, and France. Although favorable agreements were reached with the United States, Russia, and France, Modi's primary goal was to increase the number of domestically produced items in the Indian Army. India began its push in this area primarily by demanding that production take place in India and seeking technology transfer in certain sectors through bilateral agreements with other countries. As a result, although production was not initially domestic, following technology transfer, the Indian Army began to offer domestically produced products in many areas. Following Modi's tenure, another country began investing in the Indian Army's defense industry: Israel. Israel, which possesses significant companies and achievements in the defense sector, did not hesitate to strengthen its ties with Modi, a Hindu nationalist who has at times been unhesitant to implement harsh measures against Muslims. Of course, the sole reason for Israel's efforts to strengthen ties with India was not merely to gain an ally against Pakistan, the only Muslim-majority country with nuclear weapons. For Israel, relations with India are essential in the new economic routes that will position it as a central power in the Middle East. For India as well, Israel is a crucial country for the IMEC project, which will serve as a serious rival to China's Belt and Road Initiative. The fact that the two countries share common rivals in the region has also served as a significant catalyst for the development of their bilateral relations. The strengthening of ties between India and Israel is, of course, a very positive development for the United States. India has consistently been one of the fastest-growing economies. According to 2026 data from the IMF and the World Bank, India's GDP growth is projected to be around 6.5% in the coming years, outpacing most major economies despite global headwinds such as trade tensions and energy price volatility. What is driving this growth? First, demographics. India has the world's largest population, with an average age of around 28. A significant demographic dividend compared to China's aging society, where the median age exceeds 39. This young workforce provides both a labor force and a growing domestic consumer market. Second, structural reforms. Since 2014, initiatives such as Make in India, the Goods and Services Tax, production-linked incentive schemes have aimed to boost production. With an expenditure of approximately 1.97 lakh crore, the PLI schemes, covering 14 sectors, attracted over 1.76 lakh crore in investments by early 2025 and generated significant incremental production and jobs. Electronics stand out as a notable success. India has become a major smartphone exporter, surpassing China in certain markets like the US. However, growth is not uniform. While services and IT remain dominant, manufacturing's share of GDP hovers around 15%, far below China's historical peaks of nearly 30%. Global companies are pursuing a China plus one strategy, maintaining a presence in China while adding alternative production hubs. India has emerged as the primary beneficiary, particularly in electronics, pharmaceuticals, textiles, and automotive components. Why the shift? Rising labor and compliance costs in China. Geopolitical risks, including US-China tensions and supply chain vulnerabilities exposed by the pandemic. India's incentives, lower wages across many sectors, an English-speaking workforce, and improved ease of doing business. Foreign direct investment in manufacturing has increased significantly. Apple and its suppliers have expanded significantly in India. However, challenges persist. Many Indian factories still rely on Chinese components, and recent Chinese export controls on critical machinery have heightened concerns for companies shifting production. India's location offers strategic potential in global trade. Red Sea disruptions have highlighted security vulnerabilities in traditional routes, boosting interest in alternatives. Consider the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, an ambitious project linking Indian ports to Europe via the Middle East. Despite progress due to regional conflicts, it represents a potential counterweight to China's Belt and Road Initiative, which promises faster, safer trade links. India is also deepening its ties through free trade agreements and the Indo-Pacific framework. Expanding port infrastructure and digital initiatives such as the Unified Payment Interface provide soft power in emerging markets. However, logistical inefficiencies, port congestion, and gaps in domestic transportation networks continue to drive up costs compared to China's world-class infrastructure. India's advantages are compelling. The digital economy and services sector are growing. A world-class IT sector, thriving startups, and fintech leadership continue to develop. The country has ambitious solar and green hydrogen goals. Rising demand from the middle class continues to drive growth. By 2047, the centennial of India's independence, the government projects a developed economy with sustained growth of 7% to 8%. Achieving this will require increasing manufacturing to over 25% of GDP, creating millions of quality jobs. India faces significant hurdles that China largely overcame decades ago. Infrastructure gaps are one of the most serious obstacles facing India. Despite major investments in highways, airports, and railways, issues with power reliability, logistics, and delays in urban planning keep China ahead of India. On the other hand, regulatory complexity is making things difficult for India. Land acquisition, labor laws, and bureaucratic delays are holding back India's progress toward its goals. While the workforce is young, improvements in education quality and vocational training are needed. Women's participation in the workforce remains low. Unlike China's centralized, top-down approach, India's federal democracy requires debate and slower decision-making. India will not completely replace China anytime soon. China remains the king of manufacturing in terms of scale, efficiency, and integration. Instead, India is carving out its own path as a complementary powerhouse. India is strong in services, growing in manufacturing, and strategically positioned in a multipolar world. The coming decades will test whether India can overcome its bottlenecks and fully realize its potential. Success will reshape global trade, supply chains, and economic power balances. The failure of deep reforms could halt this momentum. In a world seeking alternatives to over-reliance on any single nation, India's rise offers both an opportunity and a fascinating case study in economic development. The question is not merely can India replace China, but what kind of economic giant will India become?